small, becomes, you know, an important decision to make.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure you develop a good relationship with an agency and that they bring things to the table as well.
One of the things we were talking about just before we started talking about things in front of other people were competitions, which I know I didn't expect to touch such a sensitive issue, but I mentioned it to you because I'd always known your work initially through your success in various the Cloud Portrait Awards, the Schweppes Awards, and through that. And
right.
There's not a natural area for somebody who does the kind of work you do to enter competition, but it did get you a lot of recognition. But how do you feel now about that? Because it is now a growth business of photography competitions, particularly in the photojournalism reportage arena.
Right.
Do you think that is something that's a positive thing?
No, well, I'm very cynical about competitions at the moment. There's something, I haven't quite put my finger on it yet, but something weird is happening out there. And I think as it's become increasingly hard for photographers to make a living, and those above them and agents and people, that something else is happening where photographers are now being exploited for their money. So instead of being paid, we're giving money out. We're paying to enter competitions, we're paying to go on seminars and training workshops, and it seems like a kind of mini micro industry that's grown up.
Yeah.
And I enter competitions because we want, the thing about being a photographer is you're trying to get your work seen, and it can be a shortcut to getting a project seen or published or talked about.
Yeah.
Gun Nation won a World Press, first prize in the World Press Award,
which is about as prestigious as it can be.
Which was really, really great for me. But I think that's a competition that you don't feel exploited by. The entry fees, well, in fact, there are no entry fees. It doesn't cost anything to enter, so that's a good one. There's other ones now, more and more, when I read the instructions, and you think, £50 an image, and you're going to enter 8 images or something.
And you're going to give your copyright over as well.
Yeah, but I haven't done that myself. I mean, that was where I normally draw the line.
Yeah.
But I really think it's very important, increasingly, to read, not just the small print, but just read it and think, is this a competition that has relevance and has a kind of pedigree of something that's important? Or is it just someone that's throwing together a way of getting 20,000 people to send in an entry where they pay £50 each? Do the maths, you can work out the overall...
Someone's making a profit somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm seeing more and more of that, and it really disturbs me.
And where do you feel, I mean, presumably you're now starting to work on the next big project?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I've got a number of things that I'm interested in, but I'm not sure if any one of them will be one that goes over several years.
Right.
And there's that sort of thing of, the thing with Love Me as well is that halfway through, I thought, I'm never going to finish this. I'm like a comedy, those cliched idea of a novelist who says they're writing a book, but they're really not, or they're never going to finish it.
Yeah.
And they just kind of seems like a nice thing to say. And I thought, I've become that person. I've got this project, I'm halfway through, I can't see any end to it. Maybe I don't even want to finish it, maybe I'm scared of finishing it, all those sort of issues. Who's going to pay for it?
But how do you even decide that you have finished it?
With Gun Nation, I couldn't keep my mouth shut anymore.
Right.
I would be, normally when I interview people, you have to be very open. You have to sometimes withhold some of your own views, and I found it increasingly difficult to do that. And also, I needed to move out of that world, and I felt like the work said enough.
Right.
And the Columbine High School shooting happened, and that felt like the final chapter to that whole project.
Right.
And I flew there very reluctant. I already felt like I'd finished the project, but I flew there the morning after 14 high school kids had been killed, and spent 2 weeks in Columbine photographing the aftermath. But not the real aftermath, but the sort of crazy sort of denial that people were in. Like the newspapers were talking about banning trench coats, like long black coats in schools. Instead of banning guns, they banned coats. And all the sort of religious leaders were saying, where have we gone wrong? We've turned our back on God. But still, all the sort of classified ads in the local papers were selling semi-automatic weapons to 18-year-olds. So that was the end of that project. With Love Me, it was definitely more difficult because that issue is still evolving. It's changing every few months. But I just felt that I had, through the work, made the point I wanted to make.
You get to a point at which your statement's been made.
Yeah, and you just need to breathe different air and get away from that subject.
So, apart from working on whatever the next project's going to be, what do you think is the state of the kind of work you do at the moment? Is there a future for it? Because I hear more and more people, I see more and more people wanting to do the kind of work that you're doing. But I think you've already explained the amount of commitment that's required, but also the amount of kind of cleverness, marketing. It's not just a question of just going off and taking the pictures and expecting it all to happen, is it?
No. No. I mean, I think increasingly you have to be. You've really got to be focused on what you're doing. You've really got to have a lot of kind of push to you. But the good news is it's fun and interesting, and there's no better job. But you have to find ways of financing projects. You can't. I mean, I know documentary photographers that's what they're purists and that's all they want to do. They're just bitter and twisted. And there's other people. There's more of them who started out that way and then kind of sold out and got into doing a little bit of advertising and corporate work. And then as soon as they sort of tasted what it meant to actually get paid quite well.
Yeah, that was the end of the
They just ended their interest in documentary and went off in that world. And they sort of meet me and they say, oh, I feel like what I do has no meaning, no relevance. I don't care about it. But they're earning good money and they're doing well. So my thing is to try and find that middle ground. Earn enough money where I'm not in the pocket of a picture editor, or I'm not sort of begging for scraps off their table, where I'm going to initiate my own ideas, work on them. But it doesn't mean I don't do jobs which are shitty or boring, that you have to sort of work. But I think, you've got to be sort of more